So there are a couple of things that you should know as background, particularly if you don't work on plants. So the first one is that some plants are capable of self-pollinating. So as you know, plants produce male and female gametes, pollen and ovules. And most plants export their pollen to make them another individual, but some plants are actually capable of mating with themselves. So we have this tail over here where they're sitting around mating with themselves. The other piece of background information that is really crucial for you to know is that we observe pollination syndromes in plants. So these are groups of co-evolved traits that we tend to see together when certain plants have certain pollinators. So for example, many hummingbird plants have long tubular red corollas and they produce a lot of nectar. Many butterfly pollinated plants have what we think of as landing pads. There's a whole literature on this that I won't go into. What's really surprising is that self-pollinated plants also seem to exhibit a pollination syndrome, even though there's no pollinator exerting that selection on them. So you have both a sort of fairly canonical set of reductions in floral morphology. So the flowers are smaller, they tend to be a little bit more closed, they produce less pollen. And we also have associated traits that some would argue reflect selection for either more effective selfing, so you need to bring your reproductive organs closer together, or a tendency that has been observed in some self-pollinated plants towards faster maturation and a faster lifespan. So the question I'm basically asking is, given that we have this wide range of changes in floral morphology without a clear selective agent in the form of a pollinator, how does this evolve? What's the genetic architecture underneath it? Is it just that there's one locus that drags everything else along, or does the plant have to make a bunch of independent changes to arrive at this selfing syndrome? So I'm looking at this in these two charming and charismatic species, Ipomoea lacinosa, which is this tiny thing here, and Ipomoea presention. They're a really wonderful system to look at this for several reasons. They have large flowers that we can really take apart and measure in a lot of ways. Interestingly, these two are actually both self-compatible, so they're both capable of mating with themselves, but only one of them really exhibits that self-morphology. They're agriculturally relevant in a couple of ways. They're both major agricultural weeds, and they're very closely related to sweet potato. And because they're a fast-growing vine, they root very well from cutting. So I can clone any interesting genotype I want to with a pair of scissors, which is fabulous. They have overlapping distributions centered around the southeastern United States. Lacinosa has a wider range, which is often, though not always the case in self-pollinated plants. And we have evidence that the selfing syndrome in Lacinosa, that little white one, diverged under selection. So this is from a predecessor of mine in the lab, basically comparing neutral molecular differentiation with morphological differentiation in leaf morphology, where we don't see a difference, and in flower morphology, where we see a dramatic difference which suggests that selection acted to separate them. We can also cross them, which means that we can use the awesome power of forward genetics to actually find the genetic basis of traits. So this is an example of some of the variation that you see when you make hybrids between, or late generation hybrids between the two species. And so this is Cordata, this is Lacinosa, and just within their hybrid progeny you see this fantastic range of the size of the flowers, the purple and white. If you look inside them, you see that there was variation in how much nectar they produce, and there's some variation in early growth characters and pollen characters. So today I'm going to be talking about 8 of the phenotypes that I measured, and we have both a set of those really canonical floral morphology traits, which directly evolved in the ability to self, and a couple of more general phenological traits. This is a color scheme that I'm going to be using throughout. I'm going to keep showing this key, so get used to the color scheme sticking around. So the floral morphology traits we're looking at are how tall the corolla is, how much nectar it produces. You can actually stick a capillary tube in and suck the nectar out, and the mixed maker, Cordata, with the bigger flowers, how long in inflorescence it's born on. So there's a difference between the two of them where the more outcrossing one tends to have longer inflorescences, holding flowers out further. It's putting more flowers on an inflorescence. And then how far apart the anther and the stigma are, how long the stigma is, when the flowers actually open, and an early stem elongation difference between the two of them, which reflects faster growth. I genotype all of these using one of the many genotyping by sequencing approaches that people are using now. I call genotypes in stack de novo and assembled my linkage map and mapped my QTL in RQTL. And in this version of the linkage map, we have 170 individuals with 760 markers, and they assemble into the number of linkage groups we expect, which is very reassuring. So, first of all, I'm going to tell you what the phenotypes tell us about this question of independence or interdependence among these traits. So, if we just look at a matrix of correlations, there are a couple of things I want you to pick out from this, which is, among the floral traits that I put on there, they seem to be fairly correlated, particularly corolla length and stigma length. There's quite a strong correlation. There's a lot of scatter in some of them, so corolla length and inflorescence size trend, there's a real scatter, but there is a tendency for these to be inherited together. Conversely, if you look at the phenological traits, the correlations are smaller, or in this case of early growth, no relationship whatsoever to the floral traits. So, how does this look when we actually get into the QTL? There's a lot of numbers in this table, so I'm just going to go through it quickly. The two things I really want to pull out for you are that there are three linkage groups that we see multiple QTL on. So for some of these traits that are correlated with each other in the phenotype, we're seeing that reflected in the genotype, which is reassuring. I also want to point out that most of these QTL are of fairly small effect. Although when you look across all the 6 QTLs we took back out for corolla length, we've actually got about 80% variation explained, which is great. So a graphical representation is the same thing. You can see that anytime you have a QTL for corolla length, for how big the flower is, you have one overlapping as to how long the stigma is. So that's that really strong correlation we saw. In this case, it actually looks like these are centered on exactly the same marker. By the way, the bars, the black bars in the middle are the log peak, and the long bar is a baby peak. So we have several overlapping QTL. We also have things that don't overlap and are just scattered throughout the genome. We have multiple changes in multiple places, some of which are affecting multiple traits. We have very high confidence for color, which is reassuring because it's a binary trait and we actually know the locus. And early stem elongation, which had absolutely nothing to do with anything else, is sure enough hanging out on the right side. So, in a way, the question of did these traits evolve independently from each other was not the right question. It's not that there is a place that changes size, and a place that changes nectar, and a place that changes inflorescence size. It's that there are multiple changes did have to happen. It wasn't just one big change. But all of these changes affected more than one floral trait, or many of them affected more than one floral trait. This is actually consistent with an emerging trend of what people have seen in other studies on the self-link syndrome. There have now been studies in at least 4 systems, and there's a fairly consistent pattern where people find multiple loci that affect multiple traits. Usually between 2 and 7 or 8 loci per trait, but in Mimulus there's like 10 plus, so those are highly polygenic. It also fits with some ideas about how floral morphology is integrated as a unit. So a recent review on how floral changes happen in a correlated way asserted that you have multiple loci affecting multiple traits, not just in the self-link syndrome, but in general in the genetic architecture of how flowers work. So, next things we're going to be working on, we're going to be improving our linkage map and our reference genomes. We've got some more sequencing coming down the pipeline. We have very soon on the pipeline kind of expect that, you can make many small pollen or few big pollen, but you can actually make many big pollen or few small pollen. So we'll be getting, hopefully, PCL maps for those traits pretty soon. We've also just finished phenotyping mapping populations for a reproductive barrier between the two species. So we're really curious both about the mechanism and the genetic basis of that barrier, and to know how that relates to the selfing syndrome changes. And because we have so many hybrids, I've been working on developing recombinant inbred lines and backbirth lines so that we can look at possible selective explanations in the field. So, with that, I'd just like to thank everybody at Duke who has helped me with everything,